Hey guys, it's Michelle, the Insulin Empress. Last Thursday, on May the 1st, I decided to do that protein experiment that I told you guys about in the protein video, about how protein does not spike insulin, and so it is safe to eat, and it's safe to eat in large quantities too. Um, and so I did an experiment because I had already done this experiment before, and I couldn't find the pictures of my before and afters. I don't even remember how long ago it was. I did it, and it was kind of a revelation to me that because I used to be afraid of eating protein, especially beef, because I was told that it was insulinogenic, that it would cause an insulin spike. And so I was afraid of it for the longest time and ate only chicken for the longest time. And chicken doesn't really have that much nutrition to begin with. So I did the experiment where I had like 20 ounces of beef, and my ketones were 0.3 before, and afterwards, 2 hours later, they were at 0.3 still, and my sugar hadn't gone pretty much anywhere. And so I did the experiment again on Thursday. This time I had 17.7 grams of ground beef, and I had like five eggs later on. But I didn't have the eggs as part of this experiment. I just wanted to do just the beef, and I did. And then 2 hours later, my sugars were just a little lower than what they were before. So they were in the 90s when I started, they were in the 80s 2 hours later. Ketones stayed the same. They were 0.4 before, and then 2 hours later, they're still at 0.4. That is a very, very important piece to remember, because if insulin had gone up, my ketones would have gone to zero. And I'm more sensitive to an insulin spike than most people because I have an insulinoma. I have a tumor that makes enough insulin for 20 people. And so mine is reactive, which means it reacts to food. Whenever I eat food, that's when it goes nuts. So having had some kind of food, if beef or protein would have spiked the insulin, my ketones would have gone to non-existent. And it goes to non-existent very easily. It doesn't take much. But eating just protein, and I ate a ton of it, 1,500 calories of it, okay, in one sitting. It didn't change the sugars hardly at all. It dropped by like 10 points. So it didn't go up, it just dropped. And then, and it didn't drop to hypo level. So I know people who are worried about having hypoglycemia or reactive hypoglycemia. You don't have to worry in this kind of situation. If you have regular hypoglycemia, yes, you need to have carbs. That's a huge distinction. If you have regular hypoglycemia, whether it's fasting hypoglycemia or exercise-induced hypoglycemia, or if you have hypoglycemia after gastric bypass, so a post-bariatric hypoglycemia, or if you have a regular insulinoma, so like I have an insulinoma, but mine is reactive, it's strictly reactive. So if you have any kind of regular hypoglycemia, and usually with regular hypoglycemia, your body cannot recover on its own, okay? So with regular hypoglycemia, you need carbs. That is an absolute fact. You need carbs. The only other condition that will have hypoglycemia happen is if you have leucine sensitivity, okay? It's a genetic thing. If you have leucine sensitivity, then that will cause an insulin spike. So the leucine will spike insulin in this situation, and that insulin will cause you to have hypoglycemia. So if you have leucine sensitivity, if you eat protein, this is the what do you call it? This is the test you want to do, the experiment. There you go. That's the word I was looking at. This is the experiment you want to do. You want to check your sugar and your ketones before eating. Okay, preferably after a fasted state of at least 8 hours. Okay, eat your protein and eat a good amount. Okay, and then 2 hours later, check your sugar and your ketones again. If your ketones, if you had any ketones, if you didn't have any ketones, this was going to be really hard. But if you had any kind of ketones, 0.3 or higher, if you had any kind of ketones, and then after you eat, if those ketones go away and go down to 0.1, which is the same thing as 0, then that is possibly a leucine sensitivity, and you should ask your doctor to get you checked for a leucine sensitivity. It's a genetic thing, so it's a genetic sequencing, genetic test. For those having reactive hypoglycemia, you do not have to worry. The only foods that cause reactive hypoglycemia are those that cause an insulin spike. So leucine sensitivity is kind of right there. It fits in both categories of reactive hypoglycemia and regular hypoglycemia. But for everybody else, whether you're dealing with POTS, whether you're dealing with insulin resistance, the most common cause of reactive hypoglycemia is insulin resistance. If you're dealing with any of that, you don't have to worry because you're not going to drop too low. Okay, you're not going to spike insulin. Spiking insulin is what causes the subsequent glucose low, because your sugar goes up and then your insulin goes up and your insulin overtakes your sugar and then it causes it to go too low. So in this situation, you don't have to worry because the beef is not causing, or the protein is not causing an insulin spike. It's not going to do anything to your sugars. You'll drop a little bit, but it's not something that you want to worry about. So my sugar levels went down about 10 points and my ketones stayed the same. That is the important point to understand, is that protein does not spike insulin. Insulin is what causes you to gain fat. Okay? Protein and fat do not spike insulin. And if insulin is not raised, you will not be putting on fat. So if you're trying to lose weight, protein is your friend. Now, if you are a type 2 diabetic where your sugar levels are really high, this is the time when you need a little bit of help, because every time you eat protein, you spike glucagon. And I talked about this in my protein video. You're going to spike glucagon. Glucagon raises sugar. Now, when sugar goes up, if your sugar levels are over 100 already at a fasting state, you're going to spike both the sugar from the glucagon, which then is going to spike insulin. And so you're going to have that insulin response. So there's a way to mediate that, and that is by either taking metformin, which you might already be on, or berberine, which is a more natural and has less side effects, less digestive side effects. It's a more natural form of metformin. Either of those two. I think there's another one called inositol. It might work the same. I'm not sure. I have to look at that one a little more. But I know berberine and metformin help to stop glucagon or slow it down, so that way you don't get as much of a glucose spike, which means you won't get as much of an insulin spike. So then as you're lowering your sugar levels and your body gets used to the new levels, you will do better with more and more protein, and you won't have the glucose spike or the glucagon spike, which then causes a glucose spike. I hope this makes sense. I know it may seem a little confusing, but protein is safe. Protein is important to repair all of your muscles, to repair everything that's going on in your body. Needs to be constantly replaced. So taking in protein is super, super important. Even for those people that have leucine sensitivities, they still need protein, even for conditions called PKU. If you've never heard of PKU, I don't know what it actually stands for. It's a long phrase. I've seen it before, but I don't remember how to say it. But with PKU, there's certain amino acids, certain proteins that you're allergic to, more than just the leucine. And so you still need protein. Your body is still made up of proteins and fats. So you still need protein and fat in your diet. But in those situations, if you have a leucine sensitivity, you need to stay away from foods that contain leucine. And then for PKU, I know people that have PKU, they know that there's some shakes out there that they've made where they've taken out the proteins that are a problem and left in the proteins that aren't a problem. So that way you can get this shake. But from what I've heard, it is a prescription and it is very expensive and it's very hard to get. But there's ways around it. People have been living with both of these conditions for a long time. So there are ways around this. It's a little bit difficult to get into. So protein for the majority of people out there is not a problem, does not cause an insulin spike, will not cause you to have type 2 diabetes or insulin resistance or any of that, because does not spike insulin. It does not spike insulin. So it is not an insulinogenic food. It's not something to worry about. It's something that's actually very, very helpful. And even in those cases where you do have sensitivities or you have PKU, there's ways around it. So I hope this information helps you. I hope that my experiment helped you to see that, it can be a very, very good, safe option. I encourage you guys to try it yourself. Do the experiment, get a Keto Mojo, and try to see how you react to it, how it affects you. So, you go for a fasting period. When I did this experiment, I had fasted for a little over 2 days. I think it was 42 hours. So I was really insulin sensitive. That's another thing. the more you fast, the more insulin sensitive you are. So the more you'll react to something if something causes an insulin spike. So that kind of made it doubly sure that if I would react, I would really react. And I didn't. I didn't at all. So do a fasting session, check your sugar and your ketones before, eat your food, and then 2 hours from the time that you start your food, from the time that you start, not from the time you finish, from the time that you start your food. If you start your food at 2 o'clock, you're going to check at 4. So check it 2 hours later, check your sugar and your ketones and see where it's at. If you had ketones before and they diminished, then you may have a leucine sensitivity. If you didn't have any ketones to begin with, that is called insulin resistance. Insulin resistance keeps you from burning fat, and it is reversible. That's one of the things that I do, is I help people to reverse their insulin resistance. So if you would like any help with that, just hit me up, write me a comment, and I'll get back to you. This is what I do on as a hobby on the side. I love to help people reverse their insulin resistance, and so let me know if you would like some help. But I hope this video helped, and I will see you guys in the next one. Do not be afraid of protein. It is something that's very important for our body, very helpful for our body, and it doesn't hurt us as long as you don't have leucine sensitivity or PKU.